Okay, hi everyone. So we're on Unit 3, Populations, and here are some of the sticky note annotations for this chapter. So we're starting out right now with Chapter 6 in the textbook, and we're going to be doing modules 18 and 19. I think they will be in separate videos, but let's see how long it takes. So we're talking about populations. So what is a population actually? So, the natural world ranges from a tiny single individual to all the biotic and biotic components of the earth. So we're going to start out from a broad level of complexity, and then narrow our focus to the population level. We're going to consider the characteristics of populations and discuss factors that determine how they increase and decrease over time. So the definition here of a population is individuals that belong to the same species and live in a given area at a particular time. So we start out, let's look at this next page here so I can show you this graph here, this little diagram. I love this. So these are the levels of complexity that environmental scientists study in nature. So we have the individual. And then that is, survival and reproduction. So that's the unit on natural selection. But here we are right now at population, which is population dynamics. Okay, and then we move to community, ecosystems, and biosphere is the largest level of complexity. So we're going to talk a little bit about population. Populations are dynamic. So that just means that they, and that's from this text here, they have distinctive characteristics. They're dynamic. Individuals die, individuals are produced, and individuals move. And so that's like those are the basic three things that we're going to talk about. Population ecology, the definition is the study of population changes. So it's important for us to understand what causes a population to increase or decrease. Understanding this would help us to improve survivability and reproduction, or to control and eradicate if it's invasive. So that's why scientists want to study it. So population size is actually referred to as N. It's the total number of individuals within a defined area at a given time. So let me move on to the next page. They give an example of a condor. You could read that. The condor once ranged throughout California and the southwest United States, but over the past 2 centuries, poaching, poisoning, and accidents greatly reduced the population. By 1987, there was only 22 birds remaining, and scientists realized that it was nearing extinction, and they decided to capture them and put them in a zoo, breeding program at a zoo, and as a result, they were able to increase the size by 2016 to 440 birds. So, that's kind of cool. So here we have, for much larger populations, we're going to have to use the scientific notation, which is the math practice that we did last week. So anyway, so population size is you can see that that's N. Then we have population density and population distribution. So population density is the number of individuals per unit at any given time, and the distribution of those of that population is how they're distributed with respect to one another. Okay, we're going to move ahead for a second and just look at a graph here, right here. Population distribution. I like this little figure here in the textbook, figure 18.3. So we have 3 different types. We have random, uniform, and clumped. So here we have random distribution. So that would be like trees. So trees are, the seeds are dispersed in some random fashion and, based on the nutrients in the soil and the light conditions, et cetera, water, the trees will grow. But they're distributed completely randomly throughout the environment. Then we have something called uniform distribution. And if you take a look at this, these are Australian gannets, Morus serrators. They exhibit a uniform distribution. So they're like territorial nesting birds. And so this is what they look like. It's uniform distribution throughout their environment. They keep an equidistant space to each other. Kind of cool, right? Like us now, right, with the 6 feet. So the last one is clump distribution. This is the way populations are distributed. And this clump distribution is more like, protection. So you might find, like, look, these are little meerkats. Aren't they cute? But they're all clumped in little gatherings. And this is how they look. They distribute themselves this way so they can look for predators. Gives them extra protection, right? Okay, let me just make sure I went through everything on this page. No, let me go back. So I need to do this one next. All right, so population sex ratio is the ratio of males to females in a population. That's basically what it is. And the population age structure is how individuals fit into a particular age category within a population. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So now, I'm going to put this back here, sorry. And then I'm going to do this limiting factor. Let me just talk about this for a second, the limiting resource. So there's a limiting resource is a resource that a population can't live without, like food, for example, or water, or oxygen if you're talking about a marine environment. So they can't live without it, and it's occurring in quantities less than what the population requires to increase in size. That's a limiting resource. So we'll talk about that a lot throughout this chapter, so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that definition. So please write that sticky note. Now, we did the scientific notation math practice, and so we did adding and subtracting exponents. So you add or subtract the digit terms and retain the exponential terms. And then multiplying, you multiply the digit terms and add the exponential terms. And if you divide, you have to divide the digit terms and subtract the exponential terms. And remember, the digit terms are the numbers and the exponential terms are the exponents. And then you're going to convert the numbers into scientific notation. So that's that. We did that practice. Hopefully you did your sheet and put it in the folder. So we got that one down. So, okay, so now there's some more. This chapter is very heavy in definitions. So please make sure you write these down. When it comes time to review for the AP exam, you're going to be removing all these sticky notes and putting them into a notebook. So please make sure you write all of these, because this will serve as a really good review guide for you. So we have factors that influence population size. They can be classified in 2 ways: density dependent and density independent. Okay, so we have this guy Gauss, and he studied these 2 species of paramecium, which are single-celled organisms, and he added a constant amount of food, and the population experienced rapid growth, but over time the growth slowed. And then he decided, maybe the population growth was limited to their food, limited resource. So he added more food. He gave them more food and then watched what would happen. And actually, the growth, there was a rapid growth, and then it slowed again over time. So the population sizes were approximately double to those observed in the first experiment. So this is where the limiting resource comes in. So that was interesting. So density dependent factor is a factor that influences the probability of survival and reproduction. So for example, in Gauss's experiment, it was food, right? So it depends on survival depends on the size of the population. So the example here, this is the way I put it, is that if you have a large population with no food, the population is going to die. If you have a small population with a lot of food, they're obviously going to survive and increase in size. So that's a good analogy to use for that. And then I'm almost done here with Module 18. So here's the figures to show Gauss's experiments. Low food condition, they grew slowly over time, but then they leveled out. With the high food supply, they grew much higher, but they still did level out. Okay, So this leads us to talking about carrying capacity. Gauss's experiments, the population increased because there was a limit to how many individuals the food supply could sustain. So the limit is the carrying capacity. So the carrying capacity, which we always say is K, is the limit of how many individuals in a population the environment can sustain. And so knowing this helps us to predict how many individuals an environment can sustain, right? So if we wanted to study that. Then we have density independent factors, which are factors that have the same effect on an individual's probability of survival and the amount of reproduction at any population size. These are not dependent on limiting factors. These are more having to do with natural disasters or events. Like, for example, we have a koi pond, and in the winter it freezes over. If the koi pond is not deep enough for the fish to go down and survive, they will freeze, right? Also it does protect them though. If the pond is deep enough, then the birds can't get to them, right? Because there's a level of ice over them. Plus, it protects them somewhat from the weather. But that then the herons would, if we had koi ponds and herons, the herons would actually starve to death if they couldn't gain access to the koi in the pond. Okay, that's it for Module 18. I want you to write your answers to the 5 questions here, and I will check them. Okay, I will be back for Module 19.